Hype Network presents.
Yeah, it's basically similar to, humans will be humans or something like that. And basically, I mentioned that because even though if anyone's trying to improve themselves, there's gonna be some lapses every now and then because since we're emotional creatures, sometimes we can give in to temptation or anger or happiness. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It's most of the time it's a battle of both, positive and negative emotion. It's not one over the other, it's both. So
Hi, my name is Mark Adam and I'm the host of Quantox the Podcast, a podcast show that we can discuss different hot trending topics from love, social media, politics, and many more. May pagkulitan makipagkwentuhan lang dito sa Quantox the Podcast. See you there!
Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Reflection, and I have an interesting guest with me that followed me on Instagram at first. He has the same passion projects as mine, and we just connected on Instagram, and we took it to the next level by adding me on Facebook. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce my guest, Andro Borja. Did I pronounce it right,
hey
man?
guys. Yep, you did. You killed it.
I hope I didn't butcher that. So hey pal,
No,
how
no,
you
no.
doing? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Impressed that you pronounced my name correctly the first time. A lot of
Yeah,
people say Andrew or something else, but
yeah.
yeah, you nailed it.
Awesome, awesome. That's relieving for me to hear. And
Hmm.
before we get into the meat and bones of our conversation, we want to put that aside first. I want to ask you. I want to take a time travel back into high school. If you and I
Right.
were classmates in high
High school.
school, who were you in high school? If you and I were classmates in high school.
Damn. Well, back in high school, I was one of the emo kids, if you might say.
Yeah,
And I was, I mean, looking back at it now, I can see that I was hungry for attention before, and I
yeah,
didn't realize it during that time,
yeah,
because I think a lot of it had to do with us being a broken family, but that's another topic.
yeah,
But yeah, if we were classmates back in high school, I'm that emo kid back at the back seat.
yeah.
I was a silent kid, and I used to do everything to fit in at the same time, isolate myself. It's kind of weird, trying to fit in, but at the same time, you're trying to isolate yourself. And I was trying to isolate myself to gain attention, which is weird because whenever the teacher asks, "Hey, how are you? Are you doing right? Are you doing all right? You have been talking for a couple of minutes or an hour already, or a couple of hours,"
Yeah,
and I get satisfied with that. And well, going back to the lack of attention because of being a broken family,
yeah.
I now understand why. But yeah, I used to cut my wrist, that
Oh,
emo type of kid, and I
oh,
had scars on my wrist right now. I'm not sure
yeah,
if it's gonna be visible on camera,
yeah,
but yeah, I'm that type of kid.
yeah.
I'm that
Interesting.
type of classmate.
Interesting. When you said emo, the first thing that I had in mind was the eyeliner thing. If
No,
you,
no, no, I didn't do those. I didn't do those.
yeah,
I didn't do those.
that was the first thing in mind, huh? Emo,
Yeah,
listening to
I
Green
mean,
Day and stuff like that.
yeah, secondhand serenade, man.
Yeah.
Secondhand serenade. I mean, the most emo physical thing I have done is the hair and then the
Ah.
cutting of the wrist. That's pretty much
Ah.
it. I didn't do any eyeliner or lipstick or anything like that. I didn't take it to that level.
Yeah.
I mean, fortunately, I didn't take it to that level.
Yeah. Interesting, interesting. That's one way to open up a conversation. Emo. It's a phase, and
Emo kid.
yeah, and I'm sure it was a phase. And right now you're in a different phase. You're in a different vibration. I presume
Yeah, absolutely.
you're in a what vibration are you in? What frequency are you vibing in right now?
Well, right now, um, I'm in the process of still improving myself in terms of um I've been working out, which I haven't done in years, and I've been able to do it for 2 years now consistently, and I basically made it part of my life. And
Nice.
I'm more self-aware now.
Yeah.
I don't just lose it. I don't just lose my cool all of a sudden. I
Yeah.
try to reflect on it first. I internalize my thoughts before I burst. Although sometimes it's still a very hard thing to do, you know,
Yeah.
because emotions are emotions, and well, as humans, we're emotional creatures. And so
Yeah.
that's another thing on why I think emotional intelligence is really important. And yeah, that's sort of like the my vibe right now. Trying to be positive, a positive person for myself, for my girlfriend, and the people around me.
Yeah.
And I do my best. And yeah, that's the vibe I'm getting from myself right now. And I'm still trying to improve.
I like that last thing that you said that really caught my attention. Emotions is emotions. That's such powerful. I never I never looked at it that way. Emotions in an emotional sense. That's really powerful. And
In what way?
I don't know. It has that emotions is emotions. When you hear it saying it, you I never at first it sounds simplistic. If you take it face value, it sounds simplistic. But emotions is emotions. It's kind of somewhat very powerful. It has some kind of it has some inner feeling to it.
Yeah, it's basically similar to, humans will be humans or something like that. And basically, I mentioned that because even though if anyone's trying to improve themselves, there's gonna be some lapses every now and then because since we're emotional creatures, sometimes we can give in to temptation or anger or happiness. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It's most of the time it's a battle of both,
Yeah,
positive
yeah,
and negative emotion.
yeah,
It's not one over the other, it's both. So
yeah. That's powerful. You have a very powerful take on life. I'm quoting you on that. Emotions is emotion. That should be on a T-shirt.
I
To be
mean,
honest.
man, I didn't even thought about it, throughout well enough. It just sort of
Yeah,
came out. To me, it doesn't really mean anything that deep,
yeah.
but I'm glad that you think about it that way.
That's how I look at life. There's something about life that always gets that interesting vibe. Some people look at it in a different perspective. That's why I love interviewing people. It excites me the most because having that perspective that you never expected, like emo phase. I've also gone through that, but
Right.
in a different direction. I was more the Michael Jackson phase in my high school. I was more the popular guy.
Nice.
I was when Michael Jackson's popularity came into sweep the nation. It swept me off my feet. So I went with the trend as well. I was popular then, and I'm getting friend requests from people that I don't know, and they still remember me for that. So that's one thing about me that you should know, pal. I was also emotional. I looking back at life, I was emotional, but I enjoyed my fame more than anything else. I do miss that. Looking back, I do miss that the phase
I
of
mean,
becoming famous. Yeah.
would you prefer to be famous or be fulfilled?
at this point, as I age, like fine wine, I'm looking at fulfillment and more of motivation. But famous was back then, you know, because back then
Right.
I was the talk of town. Anything that I did, this is his girlfriend. Don't want to mess around with him. You know, those kind of
Mhm.
those kind of simplistic things. I
Yeah,
Yeah,
those yeah, I get that feeling, and it's sort of like the same back when we were in high school. Like there were popular people that always gets the girl,
yeah, yeah,
and is always the talk of the day, and
yeah,
sort of like just you know everything revolves around them.
yeah. So in this series, we're talking about looking back. Was there any specific story that you have in mind that you want to share to the class, like, you know, uh, uh, breaking point or something of that sort, that you reach this point where, hey, I don't like this anymore. Was there any story that comes to mind?
Well, yeah. So I've mentioned, I think it was before we recorded, that I was a pessimistic person before,
Yeah,
and my girlfriend can attest to that. That that went on for years and years and years. And looking back at it now, it's even crazy to think that I'm able to think differently now,
yeah,
although I'm still trying to, improve that. Because again, going back to emotions are emotions, it's
yeah,
an ongoing thing. But even I can attest that I'm totally different now to before. And so I'm gonna share a story back then, a simple story to show how pessimistic I am before. So
sure,
me and my girlfriend went to Baguio, and then long story short, we were gonna head home, and
yeah,
then we missed the bus that we were supposed to. We're chasing time.
yeah,
We almost missed the bus, and from where we were at to the bus terminal, it was, I don't know, 30 minutes or 20 minutes, and basically we can't find a ride
yeah,
that will take us there fast enough to reach our bus.
yeah,
I was moping around. I already lost hope. I was frustrated. She couldn't talk to me properly.
yeah,
Yeah, I pretty much lost hope, and I was all of the thoughts that was going in my head were negative, like shouldn't have done this, things like that.
yeah,
Shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done this. And then she was busy trying to find a solution.
yeah,
And then what she did was she rented a whole jeep, jeepney, the one that we ride in the Philippines.
yeah,
She came up with a solution, and she asked the jeepney how much was it,
yeah,
and we agreed upon a price, and then we were able to make it to the terminal in time, and we'll go home. And
yeah,
so that's one of the very simple things that it's very simple yet it stuck with me, because if a simple problem like that, that's how I behave. What more if a huge problem came my way?
yeah.
And
Makes sense.
it really dawned on me now that I had to change, and that was 2020 is when I really started to change. And the the trip I'm talking about was maybe 2017 or 16.
Yeah,
And so looking back at it now, I'm I'm very happy to say that I'm not that person anymore. But
yeah,
that I'm not gonna deny that that was a phase that I went through, or that is a part of me, and I'm happy to share that any day, because if another person, the same age as us or any age basically, is also, going through a pessimistic, depressed state, and then I'll do everything I can to help them shift that to how my thoughts are now. So that's a story that stuck with me. It's pretty simple, yet it stuck with me. I also
yeah.
have a couple of stories, like two more in the back of my head, but those stories are more recent. So
Yeah. Sure, share it with the class. I'm happy to hear it. I'd love to hear it.
All right, got it. All right. So first is, I mean, going back, I think it was 2021. I lost my grandfather the day after my birthday, and basically we've been living together for 15 years. And
Yeah,
so everything happened so fast, but at the same time, it's like everything is on slow mo. It's really pretty weird, and I'm pretty sure you've gotten yourself in those kind of situations where you're thinking, "Is this really happening? Is this really happening?" It feels like a dream, but it's happening right in front of you.
yeah,
And then I'm not gonna go into the details too much because it's gonna be a long story. But my grandfather was feeling bad the day before, and then the next day he decided to sleep and never woke up. And then that's the first time I've been in an ambulance with a relative on the way to the hospital, and he didn't make it. And that's the first experience I had with, I was holding his hand and he died in front of me. He until his last breath. So that's very memorable. And talking about, the small issue that I shared about the trip that my girlfriend had.
yeah,
If I was the same person back then, I can't imagine how I would be able to handle that now.
yeah,
And yeah, basically I can't imagine what what will I do in that situation if I hadn't changed for the better. So I'm very thankful for the things I've learned, things I've discovered about myself and improved about myself. So yeah, the death of my grandfather is really a life-changing thing. And
yeah,
it's always one of those things where it's easy to say how you've improved in life so far, but wait until something drastic happens to you and slaps you in the face. Then
yeah.
you'll know if what you've learned so far, if you really learned it. Yeah. So that's one of the stories I want to share.
Oh, it's powerful. I felt that I was there with you with the storytelling. I felt like I was there with you, and I'm sorry to hear about your grandfather. And but I love the storytelling because you took it home. It always has that connection to home. Sometimes the lessons
Right.
that we learn have some sort of connection to home, and that's what makes it powerful, I guess. And I felt like I was there with you. I was sitting right next to you in the ambulance. I felt like I was there with you, and the storytelling, I really admired it, your passion. But I'm glad something good came out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad something good came
Yeah.
out of that.
I was trying. Yeah, yeah. The funny thing is, I was trying to be positive in that ambulance while, the external world is sort of like falling apart.
Yeah,
And those are the very challenging times where your quote unquote positivity gets challenged.
yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true. I mean, at least the memory stays. That's the beauty of things living in situations like that. Like when someone dead, it. Yeah, I do agree. I do agree to a certain degree that it feels like it's too fast and too slow at the same time. It's somewhat an interesting dynamic that happens, and what factors in is the stress that puts you in that situation, and it's interesting. I really I wouldn't know what I do myself because I was put in that situation as well, but uh, the death I never got to experience that that one on one with death, but I got to experience the moments that I had with
Yeah.
my grandfather while he was alive. So the memory of that stays. and that's one thing that I
Yeah.
that stays in me, and I guess live in me until the day I die. And yeah, that's yeah. Looking back now, I'm tearing up just thinking about my grandfather, and tearing up. This is emotional. When it's a family member, it's always an emotional story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the funny thing is, regardless if you somewhat quote unquote hated that family member because maybe, well, my grandfather had a little bit of toxic trait, but who doesn't?
yeah,
And yeah, even though he had a lot of negative things about him, you still you find ways to love him.
yeah. And to challenge that with the philosophy of emotions are emotions. That's just that takes some type of quality, if you know what I mean. It just takes some type
Yeah,
of quality in terms of being a human, and that's just interesting to me. I and yeah, I'm blown away. I don't know what to
yeah.
say. It's an
Yeah,
emotional
another thing,
topic.
yeah, another thing I was gonna say, another thing about the emotions are emotions. That's sort of like why I started, my own show, my own podcast
Yeah,
about mindset because I 100% believe that, the mindset has a lot to do with everything that we do.
yeah,
And also, since emotions are emotions, it's gonna be part of your life regardless.
yeah,
But it's a hard life if your emotions are on top of you and you're not on top of them.
yeah,
So I've been learning about stuff, handling emotions, uh, a couple of practices to better, manage emotions, not
yeah,
not put them aside, feel them,
yeah,
but simply acknowledge them and know that they're there and how to
yeah,
deal with them. It's a
yeah,
really big thing.
yeah.
So it's a lot of
That
mindset work.
that interesting character change, and that dynamic from your first story to your second story. I somehow linked it together. Forgive me for linking it, but I somehow managed to weave in a storytelling, from your pessimism to that moment with your grandfather. There's some sort of connection that I see. I'm not a fortune teller. It's just that I just connected the story. It's like I interweaved it as a story, and what came of it is interesting, and the outcome of it that has happened that made you who you are now as a man. It's an interesting dynamic change, and I you have my
Yeah.
salutes, pal. You have my salutes, my
Thanks.
respect for giving that quality, changing that quality that needed to be changed, because it takes a quality type of person to know things. And in this ever changing world, like now, we with growing out of a pandemic, it, a lot of people have changed, and
Yeah.
things a lot of things have changed, and change is consistently chasing us, while we chase time. Change chases us. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I'm just blabbering because I'm just blown away
Yeah.
by the personality and the drive. I just love the energy of this conversation. I I've I myself, I'm on an emotional ride with you, pal. I felt that emotional ride with
Mhm.
you. So yeah, it's just that
Well,
interesting.
I have one last thing, that I mentioned two stories, and then I think I have one last story to share that looking back at it now, I think it's gonna be part of the story I tell my kids, future kids, or future dogs, because I'm a dog person. Maybe we got a dog instead of kids.
Yeah,
But I could share that right now.
sure.
All right. So this is about me and my girlfriend. So it was around, I think it was also late. I think it was late 2020 or early 2021. But
Yeah.
so to put more context into it, my girlfriend is a Christian, a born again Christian, and me my whole life I struggled. I have massive respect for people of faith, any faith in that, and but I couldn't find myself, being genuinely into it. And I really struggled with that because I felt like an outcast. I came from a family that's religious, and my grandmother is also Christian. My grandfather was sort of like a Catholic,
Yeah.
and I felt really like an outcast because I had questions in my mind that I can't sort of ask anyone because I was afraid that by asking those questions I will be outcasted even more. Not that they treated me as an outcast. It was just all in my head. But with that in my head, I was afraid to ask questions I was genuinely curious about, you know, because that was something, faith is really something that is challenging for me to fully dive into. But going back to the story of me and my girlfriend, um, we had this sort of like date that we were gonna go into where we had it was an all pink date. We were wearing all pink, and we were sort of like gonna drive through all of the McDonald's or pretty much any fast food restaurants that we came across. And before we started that, because the thing about, you know, religion has been bugging me so very often, I couldn't bring myself to enjoy the day. So before we went to start the date, I parked the car somewhere and said, I need to tell you something. And then I opened up about what my thoughts are on faith. I'm an I said I'm an agnostic. I'm in the middle. I'm definitely not an atheist,
Yeah.
but I'm definitely an agnostic. And she didn't took it very well. I was afraid. That's been going on. We've been together for 6 years now.
Yeah.
So that's been at the back of my mind not every single day, but often it's at the back of my mind. What if she finds out? What if she finds out? What if she finds out? Something like that. And so I can't really be present with her, be fully present like in the relationship because something is festering. So I parked the car. I told her I'm an agnostic, and she just cried, man. She burst out of tears, and then she don't didn't know what to say. Basically, she did what any, I think, Christian would logically do, which is she just prayed for me. But I'm grateful for her because she did her best to understand me. She didn't, broke the relationship because of that. And the funny thing is, ever since I've opened that up, our relationship has gotten better, like 500% better. Like
Nice.
I feel like there's nothing I could not tell her anymore. I could tell her anything. And then I'm open about asking questions about faith when I'm genuinely curious, because I have questions that aren't against it, but I'm just really curious to know. And it's not going against their belief, it's just coming from curiosity alone. And
Yeah.
then a lot of my curiosity now are being answered because of that, change in our dynamic in the relationship. And man, if anyone is in a relationship right now and you're sort of hiding something from your partner because you're afraid they might, dump you because of it, or break the relationship because of it, the fact that that's always festering in your mind, I think that will keep you from having a genuine and authentic relationship with your partner, because it's always at the back of your mind when you're enjoying. It's always at the back of your mind, what if she finds out, or what if he finds out. And you basically can't be 100% in a relationship like that. And it's tough because aren't gonna go the same way that our relationship did. Some are gonna be deal breakers, especially I think for specific religions because they follow a strict practice. But
Yeah.
anyway, if even if if the relationship breaks, were you even gonna be able to be 100% in it? Because if you're hiding something, I think the fact that you're hiding something and you aren't able to be 100% in the relationship because you're hiding something, you shouldn't be it. You shouldn't be in it in the first place. So that's my thoughts. I hope other people that have something like that and can relate to that type of relationship. You gotta let it out.
Yeah.
Eventually, they're gonna find out. You don't want to wait till you're 30 and you have 6 kids, and then she finds out,
Yeah.
and their parents finds out, and then you break up.
Yeah. I I I wanted to open up the conversation here, but I think I'm gonna hold on to this conversation because I share the same philosophy towards being agnostic as well. But
Right.
long story short, my curiosity comes from the possibilities of what if I'm raised in a, I don't know what denomination, but I'm raised in a Christian setting that has a
Mm,
denomination, and I stared back away. But my story of this was I stared back away and looked at life as an agnostic during my lost years, which I've mentioned countless times. That is where I looked at life in a different perspective because I was on my own. That was my emo phase, and
mm,
yeah, and that was one thing that made me agnostic. And when every time I mention uh, if I'm what belief I have to put Christian for the sake of paper thing. I, I don't want them to I don't want them
right.
to make sure that I'm in a cult or something because when I say I'm agnostic, the automatic response is atheism, and that's
Yeah, it's
associated.
different.
That's one thing I'm grateful with my girlfriend. Shout out to her, by the way, if she's listening to this episode. uh, uh, Shout out to her. I told her upfront I'm an agnostic, and she never really said anything against it, and that's what made me keep her. And yeah, we're going 9 months. She just mentioned to me through the
Nice. So
video.
sweet.
We're going 9 months prior to this recording, guys. To this recording, we're gonna go 9 months. I think we're going to go 9 months and above. So yeah, and Zoom is
Yeah,
reminding me to wrap
absolutely.
up. Zoom has reminded me to wrap up, and
Right.
I'm glad I wrapped up that part of that storytelling because that had a lot of things there to unbox, and I'm glad that I managed to unbox it with minimum effort, and that's a pat on the back for me because
Hmm.
usually when it comes to philosophies and beliefs, that's where it gets challenging for me because uh, it's hard. It's a hard journey, and everybody has their own viewpoint at this. And yeah, but it's an interesting topic. Also, it's nice. It's a nice topic. Probably I'll put it up for my next season, and
All right.
let's see how we can go with that. So before we wrap up this conversation, I had a blast talking to you, pal. It's been
Yeah, same.
interesting, and it's been intellectual. It's been emotional. I mean, l- emotions are emotions. That's the key thing that needs to be on a T-shirt right now. I don't know why it's not on a T-shirt, but we need to put that on a T-shirt. Emotions are emotions. Before we end this conversation, pal, I wanted to ask you if people want to connect with you via social media, how will they find you on social media, pal?
All right. So you can connect with me on at FilipinoMillennialMindset.com, or rather, that's a website. But the at Filipino Millennial Mindset on IG, and on YouTube, you can just simply search Filipino Millennial Mindset. I believe the show will pop up. Same thing with Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Facebook. And well, if you want to connect with my personal account, that's at Andro Borja on IG, and the same with Facebook.
Awesome, awesome. This has been an interesting emotional roller coaster for me, pal. I, I'm looking
Right,
forward for the
right,
part two of this because it's been an emotional. I went through an emotional thing, and that's one thing I love about my guests. Expect the unexpected, and it's been interesting.
right.
And just before Zoom locks me out of my own recording here, I want to say thank you for being a guest, and I hope you come back to the
You're
Rajiv
welcome.
show. I hope you come back to
Yeah,
the Rajiv
definitely.
show. So yeah, and for those who are tuning in, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you also share the same emotions that I went through in this conversation. And with that in mind, cheers, folks. I will see you in the next episode.
All right, guys. Peace.